Good morning. I'm so happy. I'm Choi. I think I have 20 minutes for my presentation. For the, I've been serving as a diplomat for the past 38 years, and I specialized in climate change. And up until May last year, I served as an ambassador in Denmark. It was 2016 when I was sent to Denmark. Why do I stress November? Many Danish people hate November. Why is that? They, November is the season when days get shorter, and if you have lived in Northern Europe begins rainy season in November, so Denmark people don't like November, which is cloudy, rainy, and dim, and don't have bright days. It continues until March. So November is the beginning season for that season. So Denmark people hate November. That's why the Danish don't like November. So when I arrived at Denmark, the first place I went to was a bookstore. It was a bookstore. The first book was this book, How to be Danish. It was the happiness bookstore in Denmark. So I asked myself, why are there so many books on happiness? Many people told me that because Danish people begin to spend more time from November. That's why we sell lots of books on happiness around this season. So I knew that I have to study for several months from November. So I bought those books and began to read them. Actually, when you think about Denmark, you will associate Denmark with this sculpture, mermaid sculpture. This sculpture was made after the Andersen's tale. So Danish people, the Danish are proud of the one of the best quality beer, Carlsberg, and the president of Carlsberg was motivated by the Andersen's tale. So he commissioned a sculpture to carve out, and he asked a ballerina to be a model for this mermaid sculpture. But the ballerina, when she realized that this would be a nude sculpture, so she refused. And the sculptor's wife offered herself to be the model. So the sculptor created this mermaid sculpture by looking at her own wife, at his own wife. To the right is the mermaid next to Hangang River, which is about 80% the size of the original sculpture. This mermaid sculpture was set up after Seoul signed sistership with Denmark. Then the Danish Prime Minister Rasmussen donated this sculpture to Seoul. These are two mermaids sculpture. You can see the factories in the background in Danish, but in Seoul, we see the apartment complexes in the background. So, Korea and Denmark, let us compare. Actually, Denmark has Greenland and Faroe Islands, but forget about that now. Denmark has about 300 islands. It's about half the size of the Korea in land size, and the population is about 1/10 of Korea, but 66% of the land of Denmark is farming land, and the highest elevation is 11 meters. But Korea is a very mountainous area, and 7% of land is farming land. That means for a country with 6 million and And but Korea has 50 million population, but the available land, the two countries have about a similar size available land, and the GDP is very different. Denmark is 57,000, Korea is about 43,000. So the conditions are not very different between those two countries, but there are great differences about other factors. As our moderator pointed out, the happiness index, Denmark was the happiest country from 2013 to 2016, and third in 2017 and second last year. But Korea 57th in 2017, and Korea was the 61st happiest country in 2019. And as Professor Waldinger pointed out, the transparency, the corruption is also very important in measuring happiness. Denmark's transparency is very high, but Korea is around the middle in the ranking, and the OECD's Judiciary Trust Index, Denmark is the highest, but Korea comes at 39th place in the Judiciary Trust Index. And the Social Trust Index, Denmark first and Korea 23rd. So this graph shows that Denmark and Korea may have similar conditions, but in other factors there are great differences. That's why we believe that Denmark is the happiest country. Then,
so what is the Denmark from the eyes of Korean? So the students in their elementary school and middle school believe that Denmark is the country of the fairy tales of Andersen. I think that's one of the rare fairy tales that have been translated into all the languages in the world, like The Ugly Duckling, The Little Mermaid, and The Little Match Girl. Maybe these students may believe Denmark is the country of Andersen's fairy tales. But for adults, if we think of Denmark, so adults live through this industrialization of Korea, but Denmark overcame the difficulties, and during the Prussian ruling, they lost about a third of its land, and when it went to bankruptcy, they had Pasteur, Grundtvig, and Dalgas. They led the reform. So Denmark is a country of dairy farming that overcame hardships. But what about to the young generation? If they think of Denmark, they think as a country of luxurious goods and design. Denmark has Royal Copenhagen. That's one of the luxurious tableware that young people want to have, and like Bang & Olufsen and Pandora furniture and lighting equipment. So Denmark is the country of this luxurious goods and design. For economy, for the people who are engaged in economy, it's a country with the global leading companies, Maersk. It has Lego. It also has the brand of Echo, which is a footwear company. And it also has Novo Nordisk. It also has Vestas, which is #1 wind power company. And it also has a beer company, Carlsberg. So Denmark has a lot of global leading companies. It's not that Denmark is pursuing the largest, it is pursuing the best in the world. That's, I think, the secret of Denmark's success. Then we have to ask ourselves, has Denmark been happy all the time? Denmark came to the world stage in a very glorious way during the Viking Age. The Vikings occupied the northern Germany and the Baltic Sea, Estonia from the Viking, and then the Vikings started to fall. So Greenland and Iceland. So it made roads into all those areas. So Valdemar II occupied the northern Germany and the Baltic Sea, Estonia, and the capital of Estonia is Tallinn, and that has the meaning of the city of Danish. Denmark formed Kalmar Union with Norway and Sweden, and it also formed. It resisted the advance of the Hanseatic leagues, making roads into Baltic. They had sound dues that was introduced in 1429. So 1 to 2% of cargo value was collected. So the royal court and the aristocrats were extravagant. They lost pioneership. Then came the time of crisis for Denmark. It happened very simple. The Kalmar Union was threatened. So the King of Denmark visited Sweden, invited the aristocrats in Sweden, and that feast turned into the bloodbath. That's when Sweden and Denmark started to conflict, and Denmark also failed in its diplomacy. And Denmark was second largest Northern country following the UK. So Nelson came to Copenhagen, and they made this Danish people made a mistake. So the Colonel Nelson bombarded Copenhagen for 7 days. Almost everything was demolished except for the palace. Only a part of the palace is left, and that is currently used by the Danish parliament. And Copenhagen was on fire. And also, Nelson took away all the fleet of Denmark and confiscated the Danish fleet in 1807. And Denmark engaged in a 7-year Nordic war against Sweden, and after that, Norway was ceded. And after going through 2 rounds of wars against Prussia, 1/3 of its land was handed over to Germany, and half of the population was gone. So the people in Denmark were worried how can Denmark survive. Then came the pioneers like Grundtvig, Dalgas, Andersen, Kierkegaard. And cooperatives started to flourish. And businessmen in Denmark built a small commercial fleet, and that turned into the Maersk, which is the largest ship liner in the world now, and Carlsberg. Those are the representative companies in Denmark, and that's when these companies started to be set up. So when I was appointed to Denmark, I learned there are like the new Danish canon. Those are the values that Danish people cherish. First is the welfare state. Denmark started to become the welfare country starting from the late 1990s. If you look at the Denmark in the 1970s and 80s, Denmark used to be the patient of the Northern Europe. There are lots of sick people and like homeless people in Denmark back then. But with the reform, Denmark became one of the one of the countries that have welfare system in the world, and the trust is very important. Trust with the politicians, the society, that's important, and the gender equality. Those are the canons. And Danish people also have this Yantis law. It's from the novel by a Danish writer. And the people living in a remote village think they are not very special. But if you look at the law of Yante, and all the Danish people do not say these are the Yante's laws, but these Danish people live by this law from the very early age. After spending more than 2.5 years in Denmark, I was wondering to myself why Danish people are happy. First secret is they have consensual democracy. So after the first solar shock in 1937, Denmark had to decide which energy source they will have to use. Many people thought that Denmark should use the wind power because it has lots of wind. But a lot of people also thought they also have to use the nuclear power generation. So after more than 10 years of controversy at the parliament, they adopted the wind power. So it's one of the strongest countries in the world with the renewable energy. So British ambassador to Denmark called this kind of democracy as the tribal democracy. Denmark is a society based on trust. So the common factors of these Nordic countries is the trust, and some people say this trust is the Nordic gold. Danish people are proud of their brand. It's a small but strong country, and Denmark aims to be the best instead of the largest. And another secret is Danishness. And what is that? It's Hygge. This was selected the word of the year in 2016. The pronunciation of Danish is very difficult, and it's like, if you say German with a hot potato in the mouth, then it may sound Danish. During the winter, it was very cold, and I asked to Danish people, why are you happy in this cold weather, but you're still happy? Then their answer was the weather was not bad. We only have bad clothing. So happiness is something that Danish people were making for themselves. It's not something that were given to the Danish people. So I thought that was a secret of the happiness in Denmark. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.